The world is ending. But these two goofballs don't care. Taylor and Kyle Opalk aren't here to help you. They're here to talk about nerdy stuff. Welcome to the apocalypse.
Good morning, Vietnam! That was what came to me naturally, so that's how I'm going to introduce this podcast today.
Okay.
We're doing a movie, and we got my brother Taylor, of course, and we got a little special guesty guy. His name is Jake. We've had him on a few times.
Say hi.
Say something.
Hello.
Oh. Yep. He said it as I talked over him, but that's fine. You get the gist. He's here. We're talking about 30 Days of Night. This is...
That's more days of night in a row than I'm used to, Kyle.
I've never...
What's up with that?
You know, Jake, it's funny you say that. I've never had more than one day of night in a row, truthfully.
Well, you know, if you consider COVID and like when you isolate yourself, you might have actually only noticed 2 nights in a row. So, you know,
Maybe
Okay.
if we talk about metaphorically and analogously, COVID could have been considered many, many days of night during this depressing time, I'm stopping this bit right now.
you're the only one continuing it. That's my favorite part.
Yeah.
Okay, Kyle. Are you getting your sillies out? You gotta get all those.
Yeah.
You gotta get your wiggles out.
Because
Because this is going to be a very serious one. We cannot. I mean, like this is scary, spooky stuff. People are.
I was gonna say,
depressed,
this is
I
a
will say, you know, want to hear?
serious-
I want to hear a funny story about me seeing this in the theater for the first time. I saw it with not you, Kyle. Jesus Christ, you're the only brother I didn't see this. I saw this with Dean and Ryan together, all 3 of us together, and you. Dean, we can't show him this episode because you know what happened was during the movie he started to whimper and like hide his eyes into Ryan because it was like too scary for him in the theater.
Deanie.
That was my memory of it. I remember being surprised at how violent it was, but I didn't react that way. But that was my memory of watching it for the first time.
Odd because like Dean at this point is known for being the horror movie guy. He loves horror movies. So I don't know. I don't know why this one did him in. Maybe this is you know what?
Maybe had he ever seen something so damn bleak before at that age? Like, you know, he's
honestly,
probably like a teenager.
Probably
at that point.
Not so. Like he'd
2007?
seen the thing. He would have seen
He was
the
almost
thing.
20 years old. Yeah.
And I feel like the thing is at least in terms of even like the coldness and the bleakness of that is
Yeah, I guess that's fair.
For me it is the speed
Comparable.
of the violent. We'll talk about all that stuff.
Yeah.
My assumption has always had been that is kind of relentless and being in a theater I think is the big difference. Dark lights, you're not in your like kind of safer spot, and I think that just kind of
Yeah.
I mean, I was scared when I saw House of Wax in theaters. Okay, that movie is not scary.
Why did you see House of Wax in theaters?
I don't.
It was a big moment culturally.
I was in
for
8th grade.
everybody.
I don't know why. I have no clue. I saw it with my friend Sam Martin in from Gregory Elementary School. And I don't remember.
Gregory mentioned.
I do know it was a nearby Star Wars Episode 3 because I saw it with the same group of people. But I remember that was the first time I had ever been scared by a horror movie in terms of the violence.
Whoa.
Like, in terms of like, it felt like kind of real in a way that like I have not seen this kind of visceral action done to a human body before in this kind of detail. Whereas like movies from like the 80s and 90s are like, you know, even with body horror, like The Thing is so abstract from what a real death looks like. That's not what human bodies do. Whereas like violence of that, like, you know, and Friday the 13th is
point.
so like kind of like, oh, those things, you can tell that a doll is in place right now and not the actual actor. And that was, and I was just young enough to be able to like want to see scarier stuff, and that being just realistic enough with good enough production value that like I couldn't see the seams as easily, and it just kind of I bought into the shit, man. Even though my audience did cheer when Paris Hilton died, which was kind of sad. But like looking back on it now, it's just like that bitch was just a dumb teenager, but it was very funny. I remember that. And that's why 30 Days a Night's a great movie.
We should probably what for the folks who are listening at home.
Yeah.
Just what the hell is this 30 Days a Night?
That's a great question, man.
That's hard-hitting journalism here.
30 Days of Night is it's a vampire horror movie. It's a movie about how a little town in Alaska is experiencing 30 days of night. There's a time of the year where the sun doesn't shine for 30 days. And during this time, a pack of very feral and primal, creepy vampires decide to attack this town, because obviously 30 days of night, since the sun kills vampires, is perfect for them, and it's just a feeding fuck fest frenzy for them for 30 days, and it's about this little town coming under siege and trying to survive. So it's a survival slasher horror movie.
Yeah,
with a really wicked premise.
Exactly what it is.
So the very first thing I actually want to say is I haven't seen this movie in like 10 years. I know the last time we talked about how much I've seen this, but this is back when I was like in early college, a teenager mainly. But now I'm like I've just seen a lot more films, so you just kind of appreciate things differently. It's like I didn't realize how much of a survival movie this is, and like how much of a different like kind of take to the vampire movie that this is, because it's not, I don't think there's any other vampire movie that feels like this, other than maybe you could argue like the climax of Sinners and oh my god, From Dusk Till Dawn. But like for me, it's like the.
But
Go ahead. That's basically my point. Is like I kind of forgot.
Oh no, I was just gonna expand on what you were saying, because I think that 30 Days of Night, it belongs in that same, like, there's a lineage of vampire interpretations and sort of these horror action movies that 30 Days of Night falls right in between those two movies that you mentioned, right? From Dusk Till Dawn and Sinners. And Sinners definitely is inspired by From Dusk Till Dawn, and I can see the through line. So sorry, I was just I really like that. I just wanted to note that.
Yeah, I'm glad that I didn't just like pick up something that wasn't there. It kind of almost feels like if you didn't have the opening sequence and then it just opens up with kind of the attack, you could argue this is like, it feels almost like a post-apocalyptic survival movie, in that like they're having to, like, in like 28 years later, to me, like the way that they're exploring out this like desolated, abandoned towns, that's kind of like the way that they are like surviving, and then like trying to sneak by to get into the abandoned grocery store, which has a monster in it. And like, I don't know, there's just like a lot of kind of survival post-apocalyptic tropes that I had seen that's kind of like taken some pages from there, but like in a horror movie. And I don't know, this movie was really cool. We always open up this with talking about like what we gave this out of 5 stars. I think Kyle, I saw your review right before. I think I had the same one. I put 4 out of 5 stars for me.
Oh yeah.
So I really, really like this movie. Do I love it?
Yeah, I gave it a 4 out of 5 with the old heart. Had to be hearted.
Yeah,
I fucking love this movie so much. I really do.
So Jake, what would you give it then? Because Kyle and seemed like we're in the spot.
No pressure. But we both gave it a 4 out of 5 and a heart, so
I'm not gonna have the same rating, I don't think.
Oh my god.
Because...
Such tiny PP energy.
Oh,
continue.
Okay. All right. You know what? I'll just put my little PP away.
Yeah.
You don't get to see my little PP. No.
Okay, that's recorded, by the way.
Yeah.
No editing on this.
He was practically begging for it.
Oh my god.
Rate the movie, you fucker!
Oh, the movie. You want me to rate the movie, not talk about my little PP? Let's see. Oh, well, that was... So the first time I watched this, right, was like a year or two ago, as I'd mentioned in the last episode where we talked about it, and I gave it a 3 at that point, and I was like, kind of like, I really liked it, though. It was really cool, so I'm not sure why I gave it a 3, but rewatching it firms it's either a 3 or like a solid 3.5, because, and with a heart, granted, because I think so much of it is good. So much of it is really genuinely solid and good. From the premise to, well, I mean, just kind of the overarching premise and a lot of the ideas and stuff, and the stuff that happens in the film, I think is really cool. But it's missing. There just feels like it's missing some fundamental connective tissue, some harder hitting emotional beats, some deeper character development that it's just not there. I think there's some structural stuff that's kind of messy, but it's like overall they don't make the movie bad. I just wish it was better. So it's just one of those things where it's like I don't know if I can give it more than a 3 or a 3.5. It's just really, for what it is, though, it's essentially perfect in execution. So it's like I can't. It's hard to criticize something and then be like, oh, it's just, I can't give it a higher rating because it's not what I want it to. But like at the same time,
that's what you're doing.
Like
I'm walking away from this.
Fuck anyone who's like, oh, my objective opinion. No, it's okay that you like that. Yeah, absolutely, it's fine to.
And
totally
it's like
fine.
it's not like the film is completely devoid either of character moments or development. Like the ending of the movie, I think is the closest thing to any sort of like cathartic emotional moment. It's just I think the issue is that that's the only one, and it's just not it didn't feel like that was enough to justify everything that happened in the movie. It was just sort of like, okay, I mean, it's very basic and simple, and there still is cool character stuff. It's just, I don't know, it just didn't hit as hard as I was hoping, and I hate to be the guy that does this because I usually am not the guy who does this, but like this story to me seems like so perfect to explore in like a mini series.
Yeah,
just like a slightly longer format.
I don't know if either of you know this. I didn't know when I first watched it, but it's obviously it's a comic. It's it is not an original idea for a movie. It was based off a comic book, and I feel like a graphic novel, I should say.
There's actually more to it than that. It was pitched originally as a movie, then nobody wanted it, so the guy wrote it as a graphic novel, then people were like, oh, this has an audience, people do like this, so he repitched it as a movie, and then it got picked up. So,
wow.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think a lot of that has to do with the artist who did the comic, Ben Templesmith.
Yes.
That dude, the art for that comic book, I haven't read it, but I have seen it before, and it looks so cool. Like, his style is so kind of like painterly, and it's so dark.
Yeah, a lot of watercolor looking stuff.
And I think that's kind of what ended up selling the story, giving it that visual flair, and then they were like, okay, we're going to make it a movie now.
And I think they even translated that really well in the, like the movie 300, right? Zack Snyder's 300, despite all of its flaws, of which there are numerous, it does a good job of looking like the graphic novel put on screen. And this one, while it's not obviously direct because the graphic novel is so stylized, but I think the tone was matched as well as it could be. And I think they did a really good job of capturing that same kind of bleakness and violence and... because like the violence in this movie, the blood and stuff, it's a little... It just feels different than a slasher movie would.
Yeah, no, it feels like
it's heavier and
it feels much more real, which is why it's upsettingly good. Like okay, so I mean, like in regards to the capturing the visual similarities, I mean that just plays into, I mean the comic book, from what I've seen, I mean it's bloody, it's over the top in a way that the film isn't, but you're right in that the film does absolutely still capture the bleakness, the cold, the way that the fire is captured, and the way that, just the overall, the look of the characters in the town, like it's translated in such a way that it totally communicates this idea of it being both of like a real place, a real setting, but with this like completely, these fantastical elements of these like terrifying creatures that are mythological, but as if they were sort of real, and the violence is, it's gruesome.
You know
like,
what?
intentionally
Guys,
so. It's really gruesome.
I think what the big part of it is that children were often at the center of these events in a way that I think makes it feel a lot more harrowing. That might be part of it, like the between being victims of someone doesn't want harm to come to them versus being turned versus being used as like bait, and like what they must have witnessed. Like, kids are not exempt from the horrors that are being shown here or the violence, and like I think that part for me really stuck out as something that is not typically done.
Absolutely. I think there's okay, so, and I know, Kyle, you said, I think you may have made a comment similar to this, that this very much has that feeling of, this does for vampires what 28 Days Later did for zombies, where it's effectively a new interpretation. It's a much more, grounded interpretation, and it's way darker and way scarier as a result. And what I really appreciate about this is it doesn't. The film absolutely, almost maybe to a fault, just does not explore. It doesn't do any like lore dumping on. You know what I mean? Like which is really great. Like, I really, really, I think the movie opens so strongly with.
God. Okay.
Just the introduction of, like, as you get a little text that just explains the concept of like a polar winter. I'm sorry if you're hearing some crying right now. That's my infant daughter. It's my 1-year-old. She's just waking up. So if you hear a little screaming and yelling, that's what it is. But as you are just like start to get immersed in this sort of like, and it's a real place, by the way, Barrow. I mean, it's not called that anymore. It has an Inuk name now, but it's a real place. It is like the furthest north, town. I think it actually technically gets like 70 or 80 days of complete darkness or whatever.
Damn, dude. Yeah, I would not survive.
It's like
I
wouldn't
need
like
vampires.
3 months.
I'm just killing myself if I'm up there.
Well, that's literally why. I mean, Alaska has like the highest suicide rate.
I know,
because of
it's
that.
so horrible.
So, but it's just like it's like going, and that's the setting. That's like this very oppressive setting for the film. So it's like from the get-go, it's such a genius sort of device to lock these characters into a place where they can't leave, they can't escape, and even though it's like wide open, you know what I mean? Like, it's like you're just stuck in the middle of nowhere. And I love the visual reference to, I got big Dracula vibes from the very beginning with Ben Foster shows up as I don't think his character even has a name.
He's called the Stranger.
The Stranger, yeah. And he's just like this drifter who, raggedy drifter who shows up in town. But the shot at the beginning of him, there's this like decrepit tanker that's like run aground, and
it's like a freighter boat way off in the distance that looks like it's been there for a long time.
And he's like making his way across the ice or whatever. And
so this is something I want to start talking about. These are the things that make this movie so fucking good to me. Is that this movie came out in 2007, which was at a time where monster movies were much more campy, movies that had interesting mythology were over-explained, like you said, that this movie has a lack of lore, whereas during this time in the early to mid-2000s, this is when they would lore dump everything because people wanted to know more. And a year after this movie comes out, it's Twilight, the phenomenon that we all know of with those vampires. So, like, this movie just... I said it when I reviewed it on Letterboxd too, was that I think it's way ahead of its time, which is why it didn't get appreciated as much when you first watch it, because it's it's just like, it's very cagey, right? Like, it doesn't explain the Wanderer. You have to be a smart viewer and pick up on context clues. Like, the first thing this Wanderer does, right? The kind of the opening shot of this movie is basically, like we were just describing, this freighter ship way off in the distance, kind of stuck in the ice. It's rusted. It looks long abandoned. And there's, this is a wide shot. And you see a rowboat on the shore and a kind of hooded, shadowed figure walking through the snow. So right there, I fucking love movies that do visual storytelling. And this is something that at the time, again, in the mid 2000s, they would have been over explaining this in any other movie. They would have had an interrogation scene where they ask this guy a bunch of questions and he answers them to explain what he's doing. But this, it's just so simple. It's just a few seconds of visual storytelling. And you have to be the most minorly perceptive to go, oh, there's a guy, there's a boat, and there's another boat. He came from that boat. Okay. But it does so much. One of my biggest pet peeves in movies is when I feel not respected. I mean, when I feel my intelligence is not respected and things are over-explained to the lowest common denominator type of viewer. That's what makes me so mad. And a movie like this, that's by all means just a horror slasher movie. It should be stupid, but it isn't. And it respects the audience, even in very simple ways like that, of just being able to understand what's happening. The first thing this Wanderer does is he destroys all the radios. Like, he finds the radios. I don't know how, but he, like, gathers them all up, and they find, because this is how they introduce the main characters. The Eben is his name, not Evan, Eben, which I love that name. And this is Charles Hartnett. What the fuck? Josh Hartnett. Charles Hartnett. No, Josh Hartnett is the sheriff of this town. He's a younger guy, but he's a good dude. He's a good detective. They find this kind of fire pit with all of their radios just burned in there, and they're like, why did somebody do this? They don't tell you, he must have burned all that to stifle our communication so we cannot call out to anybody.
Yeah.
As a detective, go ahead.
They have
I'm just going to ramble forever.
A random throwaway line of, like, his co-cop is like, do you think it's some teenagers? And then Eben is like, well, no, there's not like a letter that says, fuck you, authority on there. So they just plant the seed that's like, obviously he did this other force did it, but why would they want to do this? What is there, like, when I watched this for the first time, I don't think I ever really, like, in a lot of ways, like, sometimes they show shots like this as just to give you, like, kind of an emotional setting of, like, okay, here's the energy of the town, here's some relationship snippets of, like, oh, clearly him and Stella are on the outskirts, and you can tell that the town doesn't know what happens. Like, a lot of that's happening, just kind of giving you the emotional, here's all the characters, how they're all related. But they throw in these, he's visiting this guy who lives on the outskirts and sets up that he would have this big machinery and that there's some other thing. There's just a lot of setting up and explaining what the stranger did about, like, they talk about their small airport or airplane nearby was also sabotaged. But it's all done very quickly and in a way that doesn't feel like it's trying to explain to you, the audience, the way that, like, sometimes a character will come on screen and be like, oh, Eben, the sheriff of this town, what's going on lately? And then they would, like, kind of answer all the questions the audience has to that character. They don't have one of them here at all.
No, they don't have an exposition dump character.
Even without, so my point being, like, I enjoyed it as much without picking up that stuff as picking up, but it, but both people feel like the movie is good still. Like, that's how it's done well.
So, like, let's say... Sorry, real quick. Let's say you are one of those people that doesn't pay attention to that or isn't smart enough to pick up on it. It actually isn't that relevant for what happens in the movie, because if you're there to just see some brutal vampires kill some people that are trying to survive, you'll have that fun too. And yeah, you might not be asking the questions of, like, wait, why didn't they just call someone? Or, like, wait, why didn't they try to fly away? A person who's inclined to ask those questions will pick up on these clues, but a person who isn't will be fine with how the movie plays out. And like you said, Taylor, they'll go, oh, I see. Now this is just sheriff. All right. I don't know what they're talking about, phones or whatever. I'm going to scroll on Instagram until something interesting happens. So, like, yeah, it does a wonderful dual job of introducing characters, introducing a little bit of their relationships, and dropping hints as to like the setup of the movie, and you get to walk through this experience through the POV of Eben, which is something that like really good, something like True Detective does, where you don't have some fake exposition dump character for the main sheriff to be talking to who's asking dumb questions for them to over-explain for the audience's benefit. In this case, it's like we are experiencing the thing as Eben is, and we are just as clueless, but we have the same information he does, where a bunch of phones are destroyed, you don't really know why. If you're a little bit sharp, you can go, well, that is a form of communication, so someone's clearly trying to cut off their comms, but why? And that is the stuff that just, for lack of a better phrase, gets me hard. Like, really. I fucking love subtle stuff like this that, oh my god, I feel so respected.
Yeah, it's a very intelligently constructed beginning, because you get a natural, so it's like, as the film is explaining through these different instances, right? Like, this time of year is coming where this town of, just over 500 people, it goes down to like 150. And they
yes.
They make a point to show it, and it's a very natural way of kind of showing, the population count. It goes down because
everybody
more
leaves
isolated
the town because they fly out and they don't want to be stuck in this 30 days of night.
And bit by bit, these little instances that are occurring in what's great is that it's intelligently constructed, because it gives the sheriff, it gives Eben all these different reasons to be running around the town, going from place to place, because there's all this chaos as everybody's packing and leaving at the last minute, trying to get the last planes out of Alaska. And so it's like making sure things are in order, and then the there's the issue with the radios, and then they gotta make sure they do the thing on the sign, and then they get a call about the dogs that all the sled dogs get slaughtered, that's the first instance of violence in this movie, and it is absolutely what sets the tone for what's going to follow, because it's like, oh hey, here's a bunch of beautiful sled dogs, now watch a guy kill them with a knife.
Yeah.
And it's done it is done very tastefully, all things
you
considered.
do not watch him murder dogs.
You hear
but it's heavily implied. You hear sounds and you see see a hand holding a bloody knife kind of shot.
Bloody, and it's also, you see the aftermath in a later shot, and it's like, like he didn't just stab them, he like eviscerates them. And so it's like, that is immediately very disconcerting, and it just does a really good job of, like, if you didn't know for whatever reason going into this that you were going to see a vampire movie, at this point you're just like, wow, there's a really strange thing that's building up. There's a strange mystery, and what the hell is going on? If this was a movie, and I kept thinking about this the whole time, and I feel like I've even written maybe in my initial review when I first watched this, I noted how, like, you could make this same kind of story in basically any time period, and it would work. And it's like, you could make this set in like pioneer times, and the whole time I'd be thinking, if I wasn't aware, I'd be like, damn, I really hope a bunch of wolves don't show up right now.
Yeah, it's got very like a Western small town, like tumbleweed ass energy.
Yeah,
wow, that's interesting.
They are.
I totally agree.
It's like a kind of a frontier town feeling of just, it's them and the wilderness, and also these vicious creatures, which just so happen to be, bloodthirsty monsters. So, like, the way that it does, it meets out that information at the beginning in such a clever and natural way that it feels effortless, and it's happening at such a rapid pace. The pacing is so solid. And that's kind of part of what detracts from a little bit of the later on in the film, when it slows down and the pace of time is different, and it kind of doesn't. It's a little awkwardly assembled in that way, but suddenly it's like time is crawling by versus moving rapidly, and it's like, so there's a little bit of a shift in that way. But just in the general lead up to, though, before we kind of, have the brief apocalyptic moment with the stranger. He's in in a diner. He does have that moment, but it's done intelligently and, again, briefly, of him being like, you can't give me alcohol. You're not going to give me a bowl of raw meat. You're all going to die.
Yeah,
and then he's like, okay, buddy, we're taking you to the prison. Like, you're going to sit down and we're going to talk about this.
So the stranger goes into the diner and he's asking for beer, he's asking for booze. He wants a bowl of raw meat, and the waitress is like, dude, we don't have alcohol here, because everyone just would kill themselves if they were all drunks. There's no alcohol in this town. And also, we're not giving you a bowl of raw meat. And he's like starting to get aggressive. He's like, you're not giving me what I want. And he kind of grabs the arm of the waitress. And this is when Eben kind of shows up, because I think someone already called the cops of like, this creepy dude showed up out of nowhere and he's causing a disturbance. And so then they take him into the jail, into the sheriff's office.
I want to say some things about The Stranger. So what I love about it is that when I first watched it, I kept waiting for him to be the first attack, and he's not. He's just the harbinger. And I love that. Like, I don't know that a lot of vampire movies do this, where they basically, and it's like kind of lore, like, right, they would use a human as bait to kind of like, they do it literally later in the movie, but like this setting them up to be able to infiltrate areas with other people, as promised, be like, oh, and then we'll turn you into one of us as kind of the reward at the end. Yeah. And I kept waiting for him to be cool or to like have a moment, but he is like just a pathetic loser they took advantage of and just like do awful things to him. And he's just like, I don't know.
He's fully devoted to them. But you also don't feel bad for him because he's like doing really nasty, like murdering a bunch of sled dogs, and he's intentionally sabotaging this entire town to be killed. So he's like a pathetic loser, but you also don't feel bad for him.
What I really love, though, is the performance in particular is Ben Foster.
Ben Foster.
He does these like kind of just like post-druggy kind of burnout performances really well, but there's something about him that is just, he portrays this like, you could tell he's all in on it, and then the moment he realizes that like they left me here, they are treating me just like another person, was just like, it really broke that character, and he's just like, you please just kill me. Like, I don't, not that I like feel bad for him, but like I felt that character feel those things.
Yes.
Like, it was really like, and that to me was a little bit of subversion of like what his character was going to be. Is just like, he really was just a harbinger. That's all he was. He's not in on the, bro thought he was going to be on the team kind of stuff. And it's just, I don't know. I like that, and I thought it was really cool. And I like the way that Eben handles it. He doesn't ever veer into the like macho toxic masculinity of being
not
like
a bully.
Using violence as a way to be like, well, since you're wrong, I can use violence because I'm right. People are okay with it. He always is de-escalating, and that's what that type of like, we talk, Kyle, about sometimes the weaponized incompetence of cops in movies is really irritating, and I think this is a great movie that isn't like, cops are just good guys, but like, no, this is what like good police work should look like, and that's why the whole town respects him and like really just leans on him to be like, what do we do here? And like, I believe it, and I just think a lot of what makes this movie work kind of hinges on the stranger's performance and like actions, and I think the movie just shows him just enough to make you like, and his teeth are disgusting, and he's very foamy, and like, I don't know, is he part vampire? Is he only human? Is he like, I don't know what's wrong with him either, and they don't ever explain. Like, is he under mind? Like, the implication to me is that these vampires don't mind control at all. Like,
they're not classic. But here's the thing too, is that he seems to understand their language. Which,
that is a good point too.
Later they talk to him. So we're skipping a bunch of stuff, but like, I think I'm trying to hit on the important bits of, how this movie is constructed, and if it is just well made. But eventually later the vampires obviously do come. That's the whole point of the movie. They do come, and this whole time the stranger has been left in the jail cell because everyone figures out that he he's the one that murdered the dogs and destroyed the stuff, and so they're asking him like, why the fuck are you doing this? And he's just giving cryptic answers like, they're coming for you. So eventually, when all chaos breaks loose, he's the last thing on anyone's mind. So they leave him in the jail cell, and the vampires come and they do talk to him, and he seems to understand what they're saying. And that part is that. So is that a more mystical thing?
No,
like
Kyle,
vampires?
I'm gonna add to it is that my interpretation was this is not the first time he has done this for them. Right. That's the implication I got. Something he said is like, I've always done what they've asked, as if this is not the first time. And that's why I think this particular one was like going to be like, maybe he got them individual people, because like they make a big deal about keeping themselves secret. That was my understanding. Like, this guy has been in their servitude for some time. This isn't a one and done kind of scenario as to why maybe he understands some more of the language.
Okay, that's a really good point. Yeah,
I'm glad Jack can make me up on that.
Yeah. Well, and so it does. So yeah, I mean, it plays exactly into like Dracula, like the original vampire movie, the original vampire story, rather, like the original book. Not just like the character of the Stranger is basically so in Dracula there's a character named Renfield who is,
of course, he's the loyal servant with the promise of becoming a vampire.
He's like he's the familiar, or whatever they call them. Like, he's their servant who's promised, the great reward of becoming a vampire, but it breaks him mentally. And there's an equivalent character in Nosferatu, which I saw you just rewatched, Kyle.
Yeah.
It's the lawyer who's eating fucking birds in prison. But it's like, these guys who are swayed with the temptation of power and are used by these creatures to do their bidding, and because I think the idea, and from what I interpret at the beginning, is like, I assume that the large ship, I don't know if it had been there for a long time or if it just had slowly over time drifted there or what, but it's clear that the vampires had probably been inside of that ship, wherever it was, for a period of time with the Stranger. He's probably, and who knows how long he's been doing it. It could have been a couple of years. It could have been his entire life. And he's probably basically being treated like a really shitty dog by them. He's probably just eating garbage.
He looks fucked up enough to have been doing this for a very long time. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this was 10 years of his life at least.
Because he looks, I mean, like, he looks like...
He looks homeless. He looks homeless.
It's like not even like homeless. I mean, he looks like if a guy was like left outside for 10 years and just never, like, it's like extreme homeless. You know what I mean? Like this guy would have creatures living in his clothing and hair. And he's so unhinged. And like you said, like, there's literally a moment where he's just like foaming at the mouth, and he's like, and it's just because I think he's so deranged and so mentally broken, and so like he's had to do so many horrific, inhuman things, and he's been so taken advantage of, but at the same time, he is completely pitiless. That, literally he's just mocked. He's mocked before his death. Yeah, like the lead vampire is like
things they believe.
He's just look at this little fucking pathetic little thing. Like, ha 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 ha, and then he kills him. And,
at least, but I will say that is the only human in which they kill almost in a mercy first. So there's almost but that
they break his neck before they rip off his head.
But but that lines up with him being a pet, right? It's like, well, if you're gonna put your animal down, you put him down like with at least mercy. Suffering possible. But then you just move on.
So my question is, and I don't know if I'm misremembering something, why do they decide to kill him in this instance? Is it because he's wounded and they don't feel like, because he does get shot in the arm, I believe.
I just don't think there was he just thinks that
I have an actual I believe it is because this particular them coming out in the open and just ravaging like this is always a loose end type of thing of like, we need to blow up this whole place, cut all ties. I don't know if they were always planning on killing him, but I think it is very much like this particular.
So he does say it took us. So after he kills him, he says something to the effect. I'm paraphrasing, but he says something to the effect of to his like girlfriend, where he's like,
it's like, it took us a long time to convince them we were just nightmares.
It took us a long time to convince us, we were more than just nightmares, and I don't want to have to go through all that fucking work again. Now we have to kill all of them, basically. Like, I think the implication being that whatever the stranger did was just messy enough to cause them to have to reveal themselves. And so that's why they just go, well, fuck it, I guess. There's only a small amount of them, so we're just going to kill them all.
The summary for me is like, they had decided, all right, we're going to have to burn down this whole place, and their step one of that plan was to go to the jail, kill that guy, and then just go from there. That's kind of how I read it, as to why this particular moment happened. Though I can see why that would almost back up your theory that this is the first time he's done this for them, because this is the end of the, like, well, I did everything you asked. I set this town up for you. But I think it kind of, it maybe...
Well, I mean, he could have been strung along by, like, you have to serve us, and they just never tell him when it goes. It's like, is it going to be this time, and then I think they could just... And also, they understood, I assume... whether or not they had decided to kill him before they even, whenever that decision happens, they, I assume, understand that he now understands that they were never going to fucking do that. So, just because, like, when when the stranger asks Eben to he's just like, just shoot me with that shotgun. Just end it. I don't want to have to go.
Do the vampires ever speak English?
I don't even have to think about this anymore. No.
He says 2 words in English.
No God.
I guess, that...
No God.
Yeah, he does that bit.
God, dude.
But
all right,
we are pedanticing the fuck out of individual lines that don't matter.
I was just about to force us to move on. The last thing I was going to say about the familiar trope is a really good character study of that is actually What We Do in the Shadows, the sitcom, which is hysterical.
Oh my gosh.
But Guillermo is a perfect example of that, where he's just... the perfect little puppy doing everything his master says, and year after year after year, he keeps getting strung along, and with the promise of being turned eventually, and then that turns into, even in the show, it's mentioned, it's been like 10 or 15 years that Guillermo's done this, so very safe to assume that it's been the same thing for this guy, and then finally it's just over.
It's just the last one.
The last thing I'll say about Ben Foster, too, is something how devoted he was to getting this right. Was in the scene where he's been shot in the arm, because he does escalate something and try to attack someone, and so Eben has to shoot him in the arm, or somebody shoots him. He gets hit in the shoulder, they cuff him in his jail cell, and Ben Foster did not like his fake pain when he was rewatching the scenes after they would do takes. So what he decided to do was put a vice grip, or a clamp on his toe. And they would squeeze it to the point where he was genuinely feeling awful pain on his foot, and then they would call action and he would do the scene. So Ben Foster is he's a fucking beast, dude. I love him. He's one of the most underrated actors,
for sure. Especially in Warcraft.
It's something I would do too. I remember, weirdly, I can relate to this. Do you remember Mike Richards? Of course you remember Mike Richards, Jake.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if Taylor remembers Mike Richards.
I don't think...
He was sort of on the fringe. He was like friends of friends. Anyways, he was trying to do some student film stuff, and I was doing acting, so I was acting with him. And there was a scene where I had to limp and like be kind of woozy, but obviously, like, I'm a young kid. I don't really know how to do that. So I put a bunch of rocks in my shoes, so that just stepping was really uncomfortable and made me a little bit more unsure and uneasy in my footing, and it helped a lot. So I can totally see how doing something like that, especially as a really high caliber actor like Ben Foster it's just like, no, you just got to do something like this sometimes to get the scene right. So
yeah, just make it real for more real than you can imagine type of thing. Yeah,
it was pretty sick. What I want to start talking about here is it's hard. The movie's pacing, like you said, it just kind of goes breakneck at first, but then once the initial sort of circus dies down and there's only little groups of survivors left kind of holding up in their houses trying to hide from these vampires, the pacing slows down a bit. So I don't know, I don't think I have much to say about the initial outbreak of these vampires coming in and slaughtering. I mean, it's definitely worth talking about how the vampires look. They are absolutely fucking terrifying. It is very obvious they were modeled after sharks because they have these beady, solid black eyes, and the prosthetics on all of the vampires' faces. They have these very wide angled brows. They literally look like sharks. With their teeth are not just the little vampire fangs. Their mouths are just jagged, sharp shark fangs all in their mouths. Like, these vampires don't delicately bite you and suck your blood. I mean, they rip open your body and just like, guzzle you down. That's how these things operate.
Their faces are constantly bloodstained from like the amount of blood on them. Yeah, they look like
all
monsters.
Have they all have basically beards of blood the whole movie, and that's something too that this movie, they have the color of blood right. It is so dark, it's almost black. Where a lot of movies with cheaper fake blood, it's very bright red, and that's not, I mean, obviously blood is bright red, but like the darkness of the blood in this movie is what adds to I don't know, just the tone. There's so much blood everywhere all the time, and it's awesome, but also like really scary and terrifying.
The best shot of the whole sequence is the like kind of drone overhead shot of like the vampires and the blood and the snow, just like the chaos. It's like the opening in the Last of Us video game. Those kind of like, this entire town is being attacked at 100 different angles, but like just blood on the snow, also such a sick visual. That's good.
That overhead shot is one of the best in the entire movie. That whole sequence is really terrific.
I have tried. When I watched it, I was trying, because this is how you find little faults in movies. I was looking for an instance where, like, I wonder if there's a spot here where the choreography just isn't great, or you can see, because a lot of times in war movies, right, in old war movies, I'm talking about battle scenes, you can kind of see some people really like phoning it in and just like
pulling
fake
punches,
fighting in the backgrounds. Yeah. In this, like, I don't know if it was done if it was CGI or if it was composited different shots, but every single action of everything happening below was really real and deliberate. Like, the way somebody was shooting and running, the way somebody would get just tackled and just, like, head ripped off, like, every single thing looked so real. It looked like an actual drone shot capturing chaos in a town. Like, it was, I mean, this was in 2007. It's just phenomenal.
I can tell you exactly why it was so good and how it looked so good.
Let's hear it.
Well, it was total top-down control. So, of where they were shooting. So this movie is set in Alaska, but they shot it in New Zealand, which is why also like half of the cast are either from Australia or New Zealand.
It's worth noting that a lot of those accents bleed through, and it's not.
You can definitely hear some mushy, marbly mouth American accents in this. Like, and it's pretty cool though, because a lot of the guys, especially playing the vampires, but a lot of the townspeople as well, and a lot of the stunt people, they worked on. Basically, they were either part of the Matrix movie productions, or which shot in Australia, or they were part of the Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
So, like the guy who plays the deputy, Billy, he was Azog, the Defiler in The Hobbit, the white,
the white thing,
orc, and then, oh God, what's the name of that one? There's one character. It's like, his name? Is it like Keith or something? No, Doug. The guy who plays Doug. He's
the
just
big
like one
burly...
of the towns. Yeah, not the snowplow driver. That's the guy. He's American, but
yes, he is.
The Doug is like he was just like a balding middle-aged guy. I can't remember his exact like who he was in the town, but he was a guy named Doug, middle-aged guy, and he played one of the most incredible orcs from Return of the King that has, you know how they all have those such specific designs, the like,
oh, is he playing the one with like the gimp hand and the limp? Or am I misremembering? I don't know. You said he plays a good orc in Lord of the Rings and the Return of the King, and that. Oh no, the one with the skull on his head, awaiting the boat to arrive.
But he plays the one like the one with the skull hat. But it's just like so many of these guys worked on those movies, right? And I think that plays a big part in the people who did the effects were that's Weta Digital.
Oh, Weta's really good shit.
Weta Workshop. So I mean, like that blood, like they probably are formulating it very similar to how they did orc blood in Lord of the Rings, which was black.
Yeah.
And you have guys that were really well versed in playing like gross evil characters. So you have those aspects of it, and then you have the fact that they built that entire town in a soundstage. So everything that's happening, like they're choreographing, they're not in real snow, they're in piles of salt. So they can just sit there all day and run through the motions of the choreography and how they're and they're just filming it from a crane, I think, in that shot. Because what they did is they had to dig out the floor of the studio so they could build up to give themselves way more space.
Damn.
So that they could, also then be able to go up or down with cameras to shoot from all sorts of different angles and stuff. So that's why you get these really this tight composition and choreography, because they had full control of their environment.
Man, that's awesome. This is something worth noting too, that it's almost always a team that makes something good, where a lot of times people want to attribute a person. And that's why you get so many of these game studios, for instance, where this one game director is famous for one or two different games, then he leaves that company, makes his own game studio, and releases nothing but flops.
Right.
Same with a director. Oh, from this director. And then it's like they go on to do shit. And it's because it turns out the team as a whole is what made those individual things good. As an perfect example, actually, is Lord of the Rings, where top to bottom, that whole team was so fucking good that when Peter Jackson returned for The Hobbit and utterly fucking embarrassed himself with the dog shit that those movies are, it's like, okay, so it's not just Peter Jackson in this world that's good. He clearly had a whole team, which is why The Lord of the Rings was so phenomenal, and The Hobbit is not even a shadow of Lord of the Rings. It's a fucking, I don't know an analogy for it, but it's bad. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that it's almost always the teams of people that end up working so well together. David Brevik of Diablo 2 is a good example too, where obviously Diablo 2 is one of the best games ever made. David Brevik is the one that's heralded as the guy, but he has released nothing of note since he left Blizzard back in, the early 2000s. Marvel Heroes was good, but it took a long time and a lot of patches for it to become a good game, and then it got shut down anyway, and so anyways,
yeah,
that's
but to your point though,
I mean, to make.
That's something that people say, it's a common adage about movies, I think, for the people who at least understand that, it's a miracle, basically, that any movie ever gets made at all, given that the amount of people that you have to coordinate and the amount of stuff that has to be done successfully in coordination with other people. The fact that people regularly pull it off is like a form of a miracle. And then the fact that any of them turn out to be good is just basically, it's like a total crapshoot, and it's almost like sometimes by accident. So it's that's why sometimes you just never know what you're going to get, because it isn't about any one specific person, unless, and this is an issue with some development. Like, if there is someone who is too involved and making too many decisions, that can absolutely fuck over a movie. But, yeah, it's about having a cohesive team that, like, if one element of that is out of line, like we wouldn't be talking about this movie the same way we are.
Also,
yeah.
It helps a lot, too, that David Slade, the director, is British, and they just have that style. When you see a movie, like a British, an English, action-y, visceral movie, you just know. It's the same thing with Danny Boyle in 28 Days Later. Like, there's a very specific style that they have, and it fits perfectly for this premise and this specific movie. And David Slade, the director, obviously is English, and it's sort of like they mess with the frame rate. There's a lot of high frame rate stuff. Jake, you'll be able to articulate it more why English movies have that look, but this movie has it, and it makes it so much more punchy and better. I love it.
I don't know if I know specifically what you're talking about, because
you don't know that? You don't see that?
Well, not specifically with this movie. I didn't see a lot of, like, well, I don't know. I guess I just don't see the connection between, like, I think I know what you're talking about with regards to, I mean, Danny Boyle's movies are very highly kinetic and stylized.
That's the word, is kinetic. I think these.
However, I would call. I mean, I think I understand what point you're trying to get at, and I think the way I see it is, like, David Slade is maybe I see it a shared English aesthetic in just sort of the very plain realism and sort of the grimness. It's not necessarily that English people are grim.
I just mean there are specific shots, not the whole movie, but there are specific instances where I'm like, wait, I think this was an English guy, and then I looked it up later and was like, oh my god, it is. Specifically, the one shot, so earlier on in the movie, let's rein this back in also and start talking more about the movie too. Earlier in the movie, when they're first discovering the vampires are here, or at the time they don't know they're vampires, but something is happening and people are dying, there's a moment where Eben and his estranged wife or ex-wife, what were they, Taylor?
They're estranged. They're separated.
But were they were married?
Yeah,
they had been married. They were married. Okay. They are married, but they're separated.
Okay, so there's a point where they're in a Bronco together or something, in some kind of SUV type vehicle, and they're this part I also love, that Eben gets out of the car and he's like pointing at the distance.
Oh yes.
But he doesn't know what he's looking at, but then
he's like, what the fuck is that? He's like,
Stella sees something and she's like, get in the car right now. We need to go, we need to turn around, get in the car. And he's like, okay. And he just gets in, and they're driving away, and there's a shot where a vampire catches up to them while running and jumps on the hood of the car. This specific sequence and shot is what first clued me in that, like, oh, I think this guy's British. And it's that there's this shakiness and kinetic. I like that word, kinetic. And I swear they do. I think they changed the frame rate or something to make the scene look.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I know the shot now. That
it's
you're
when
saying.
It's the silhouette of the vampire, like, lurching up and slamming down on the hood of the car. That specific shot.
He grabs it from behind. There's a group of vampires. They grab the car. They're holding the car.
Well, that's a different shot. That's later, but. This is when they're just fighting the one vampire who's
because that's when it
them.
that's when it flips over. He chases. He jumps on the top, and then it's like a side profile shot of him, and he like screams up into the sky.
Yeah, that shot I was like, that feels very British to me.
It's funny. Okay, so I don't think it has anything to do with the fact that the director is British.
Yes, it does.
I think I think just maybe your exposure to English film being Danny Boyle is
maybe
throwing you off.
No, I mean, obviously. Okay.
Well, I'm thinking whatever that was, because it didn't really stand out to me as being especially like jittery, but I do know that they filmed a ton of this movie like during the day, like it was done day for night. So I wonder if it's either part of maybe a result of that process, like they digitally did something to that shot to try and emulate how it would have looked if they had actually shot it at night. Does that make sense? Where it's like the sensor on a camera is gonna react differently in a low light situation.
No, you're just completely flat out wrong. There is a British touch, and
I didn't see the under or over cranking that.
Many instances of this. Lauren and I have been watching something before, and we'll see a shot or an action scene, and we'll look at each other and be like, was this guy British? And we'll look it up, and it turns out he was.
So, Kyle, I want to actually add something. The movie...
Taylor, please help me.
I'm trying to say something, but you two are just some chatty fucking Cathys.
Yes, I'm trying to...
I will say the movie The Descent, the horror movie The Descent, also has that same energy. Also British guy. So I just wanted to say...
Okay,
well, and that's editing.
I'm just saying...
That is an editing thing.
All Kyle is saying is that there is a pattern that he has noticed, and I would say... Yeah, I have seen that as well. What I think was a funny line in this movie is like during this sequence, he says what I think is kind of like a cliche line, and I don't know, I thought it was kind of fun, is that first he says, "Stop the car." She goes, "What?" And then goes, "Stop the fucking car." And then and then she says, "Get in the car." He says, "What?" And she says, "Get in the fucking car." So they have like a mirror of it.
Great.
And it's like a weird line that I just wrote down. I was like, that was a weird mirror of like a fun little writing exercise. So just wanted to add that before we moved on this scene.
That's great. I love that you pointed that out. That's really cool. This brings me into a good transition. I want to talk about characters in this. I want to talk about how they are very smart. They act believably. And it's something that was so... again, for the time this came out, very unique that characters in these slasher movies were actually smart. And it's a testament to the fact that, like, I think the writers here knew that you don't need to make a character dumb when they're already facing something that is supernaturally powerful. And that is something that I've noticed almost like as I'm thinking of this right now, that it does feel like a cheap shot to have, you know, something like a Freddy Krueger or a Jason, all the typical monsters, be killing people that are also acting like morons, where it's like, they're already unkillable supernatural forces. Why do you also need to make them, you know, just be killing punching bags? Like, give the people a chance. They're gonna die anyway because these things are monsters. So, like, make them smart at the very least. And I love that this movie actually did that. They're like, this is a giant pack of shark fucking vampires that are gonna murder everyone. Like, let's give some of them a fighting chance and make them kind of smart and try to outwit these vampires that are just superior to them in every way anyway. And this movie did that. Taylor, I want you to talk about the characters because you mentioned that in your review specifically.
Yeah,
as well.
I was going to say, I don't know if you saw my review, but I actually call out that they constantly do the thing that most movies should do, is that there's human drama, but the characters will listen to reason, and there is this sense of, like, we need to stay human and look out for each other until the very end, and we can't let us break rank and, like, think of, and, like, I don't know, it was nice to not just have a random character. I think one of Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, since we mentioned 300 earlier, I think that's usually pointed to as a pretty well-liked movie. I don't think people hear it as like a cinematic classic, but like it's a classic of the zombie genre. And I think that movie does the opposite, where all of a sudden a character will just have this moment where like, well, I've had enough. I'm going to be the next person to get killed or be forced to kill someone else. And like...
Just like Jake Barr. That's it. Time to die. Stand up and go kill yourself.
Exactly. It's like this moment in the story is like, we need another death to happen. And this will just be like, and they won't listen to reason anymore. And I think because maybe the movies are trying to say different things, it's more like, oh, humans are the real monsters. But in this movie in particular, they have a character who is like more or less like wants to break rank almost like for a good like 30 to 45 minutes, but he always gets talked out and down in a way that isn't like him being like, I still fucking hate you guys, as much as it's like he's so panicked, but is still like not a fucking moron. And then later, something else I want to point out is in the opening sequence where like it's the two electricians and the girl, and I guess they're gonna have a threesome or something silly or whatever.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the two men get killed, but the girl who freaks out, she ends up surviving the whole fucking movie.
That's right.
They always have that person be the victim, but like even then, you think about every fight sequence when the wife is getting kidnapped and the man chases after her, he never gives up on her. All the people there are always fighting and they always work together, like in the jail cell. Like I just like this movie was showing it was kind of like about the strength of humanity no matter what, and how important it is. Even when it looks like it is impossible, do not give up and do not like give into those things. And it's kind of obvious. Eben says it so much, and like they have two separate characters that kind of do the thing where they're like, I don't want my family to suffer, so I killed them first. And the awful things happen to them both.
Oh yeah.
And so for me, that was like a really cool thing. And with the marriage thing, what I do kind of think was interesting is because they don't get into details. It can be kind of easier to, I don't know, like not buy into it. But I feel it's like almost like this. It's about those things where you realize how little those things mattered in the face of real shit.
Yeah.
And I think they're almost trying to do the smart thing of not trying to highlight like a specific fight or a specific moment because it's like not about that.
It's not about that.
So
exactly.
So that's why like weirdly this shouldn't have worked, and I shouldn't have been moved when she was like underneath the car saying like I fucked up, I shouldn't have left. Like, and they don't spend a lot of time like having the characters react to it. Instead, they let you kind of feel it. It's about how you feel about those, and like now that kind of colors some motivation. And like I don't know, I just in the kind of era we're in now, it's so nice to see people just sticking up for each other and being good no matter what. And like so that's what worked for me for the characters in a way that like the lack of detail kind of works in its favor.
There's one moment in the early on in the movie, because I hadn't watched this movie for a really long time too before I rewatched it more recently, and there's one specific interaction that made me go like, oh wait, this movie might actually be like smart, or at the very least interesting and subvert expectations in a way that I love and really really appreciate. It's when so Eben's wife. What's her? Estelle is her name?
No,
Stella.
Stella. Yeah.
Stella is trying to catch one of the last planes out because she doesn't want to stay there for the 30 days of night. So, we kind of mentioned it earlier, but the town basically shrinks to a skeleton crew. It's like just the people that need to stay there to maintain stuff and like,
it's like
choose to stay there if they really want.
They make a little fun thing. So
Jake mentioned that, like. Yeah, he changes the sign from 750 to 168, and they're like, why do you do that? And he's like, because it's important to show or something. It's just something he wants to do. But Stella is trying to catch one of the last planes out. And she ends up, I don't remember why, like, she gets hit by somebody, and like her car gets busted, and she can't make it to the airport. And so she's like, oh, fuck, I'll call Eben. Maybe he'll give me a ride. So she calls him. Basically asks him for a ride, and he's like, is that all you're calling me about? And she's like, well, yeah. And he goes, okay, well, you know what? Call me back when you want to have a real conversation, and hangs up on her.
Well, he sends Billy out to get her, so just so the play, Eben is a good dude. They did someone, he's like, I won't be the one to do it. I'll send out my buddy.
He's like, so yes, exactly. So what made me love that was, number one, you would imagine a character in a movie like this to just go, well, all right. And then like, oh, this is how you introduce the two ex-lovebirds or like potential love interest or the reconciliation. Instead, he just shuts her down immediately because she's just not asking for a real conversation. She doesn't want to talk about what happened. And so he's like, fuck you then. I don't either. And just completely abandons her. And like, I loved that moment so much. It was very quick and it was small, but it just made me realize that I think the writers are actually writing real people in this movie. And that's the heart of the point I'm trying to make, is that these are all real people. They feel like real people and not horror movie characters.
Yeah. And I think, you guys are both completely correct. I think sometimes or not sometimes. I think specifically in the section where everybody is holed up in the attic.
Yeah.
Once sort of the town gets attacked, then it's like days, like more than 2 weeks are going by, and some of the characters are just sort of hanging out. Like some stuff is happening, right? Fucking there's the whole, the stuff with the snowplow guy, whatever. But it's just like for like way too long. It feels like the one chick that works at the plant, like who survives the whole movie, but she kind of just has nothing to do for most of it. And it's like she's still a real character, but it's like almost too real, where it's like, well, I wish there was something more going on. But at the same time, that's really what it is. It's not all negative, because it's like there's the stuff with the guy whose dad has like Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's, yeah.
And
That's sad.
that was heartbreaking, and that was like, so that stuff that was like, I wish all the characters had sort of that level of like Wilson and his dad, or like Eben and Stella, where it's like maybe not strictly explicitly defined, but you see what's happening and you understand the dynamic and what the characters are doing. Not all the characters had that equally, and they didn't all necessarily.
You're right.
Need it.
I actually forgot that first girl was even alive or a character for much of the movie, because there's big sequences where they don't focus on her. Right, you're kind of looking at other people doing other stuff, and then it kind of is them in the attic, and you're like,
yeah,
wait, that's the girl from the beginning, isn't it? Okay, so like, yeah, she survived, which is cool,
and like.
Not enough.
Like Evan's younger brother, like he has a role after some stuff, but after a certain point, it's like he's just sort of there, and like, and that is a consequence of the writers being like too realistic, where it doesn't necessarily not work, but I can see how, why the reaction at large is sort of like the middle kind of sag. There are still really strong standout moments, though, and then like once then kind of Bo makes his big last stand. Bo is he's the snowplow guy who's like living on the outskirts.
It doesn't help that the passage of time is
it's
hard to tell. Like they do the
like,
thing where they show
it's so frustrating,
like 30 days remaining, like 30 days of night left, and then it'll cut to just like 14 days of night left. It's like, it's been 2 weeks. What? Yeah,
and it's
jumps.
It's smart in that you can't tell time when it's dark all the time, but in a movie, it's hard to then show the passage of time if you can't show it physically.
Especially because like they raid a supermarket at one point, so it's assumed they have a lot of food, but like you don't hear them talk about having to deal with like, I have to go to the bathroom. It's like, okay, you got to go to the outhouse over there and deal with it there, or like they don't show anybody starving or being tired. Like the characters don't really change.
The only time they do mention the toilet to not flush. They did mention that once, but that is actually my biggest downside, was that like they do kind of fast forward, and like they do kind of you can hand wave it away after they get to the grocery store about like food and stuff. It's like once they get all those supplies and are able to do that, it's like, okay, that makes sense that maybe
they're not going to starve. That's fine.
Yeah, but I do think that I think they do kind of have a convenient, like the vampires are also the fastest and regular walk speed whenever the story needs them to not be able to outrun anybody. Because like the opening kill makes it so like they can't visibly be seen because they're moving so fast, and I do the classic overselling.
It is sort of arbitrary with that. Yeah, that's like sometimes they are impossible to see, and sometimes they're just normal.
Yes, yeah, for sure. It does that trope where it's their abilities change depending on the context and the situation, and it's a little lame. Where like, no one should ever be able to run away from them, fight them in any capacity. Like, these things are just the fastest, most powerful, savage monsters. Yeah. And then suddenly it's like, oh, well, because a main character is threatened, now they're a little bit worse.
Yeah.
So it does have that.
I do like the premise of the middle section where it slows down a lot, because, hypothetically, if this is really, more of a a horror movie that's about, you know, that at least on paper focuses on like survival, like they just don't take advantage of that as much, where it makes sense that, yeah, they would hole up in like a secret attic or whatever, because I think it's explained pretty early on that the vampires are like because of the weather, they're like, they can't smell where they are or whatever, or they can't hear them because like their senses are kind of dulled by the storm or like the snow or something. So it's like, that's cool, and that I feel like could have led to more, could have led to a sequel. Like, I don't know, there's just more stuff to build tension or to lean into that sort of like they need to sneak so from one place to another, or, you know, maintain something about just, you know, leaning more into the survival. It just feels like they glossed over so much of that like suddenly you get from this really, really strong, like electric, like first third of the movie where all this stuff happens and is established, and then you get a weird, just kind of slow down, and then it just ends. And it's like, it's so strong on either end that it makes the middle feel, it's not bad, it's just so much weaker by comparison.
The way I always word it, it shows the only flaws it has during this
That's the thing, is like that's the only way I can really think of it, is it's like basically, narratively speaking, it's like perfect otherwise, and it's not even that. I don't even dislike the narrative itself in the middle. It's just the way that the filmmakers decided to actually assemble that. You know what I mean? Like, it was just a choice of scenes more than anything. And it's not, and it's in such a way that it just sort of, it doesn't ruin the movie for me. It just frustrates me, which is almost worse. Where it's like, I can see an even better version of this movie. And it's like, I wish I could watch that had like $15 million more for the budget, you know, because I think a lot of the decisions they made for the film were based on time. You know, they had to get the movie done, and I think they were on a short schedule. So I think sometimes when the story feels rushed with the passage of time, I think they might, you know, they're just trying to make an efficient movie that's also not longer than like 2 hours, which this movie gets really close. But
it feels fast, though. So we're talking about the movie slowing down in the middle, but I wouldn't even say it's a pacing issue either.
See, no, like, but I was like struggling to stay awake in the middle, because it's so dynamic. It's so dynamic, and so there's so much going on, and there's so many narrative threads right at the beginning that as soon as it slows down and you're forced to focus in on just this small group of people, that by comparison, it's like it's just like it's like narrative whiplash for me. I don't know. Maybe it's not. It could be a mood thing. I mean, I did watch it this morning, like early, so you know, there are always factors that are going to play into how you perceive a movie when you watch it. But like, it just the sudden shift. It's like I didn't even have to make myself pay attention, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I need to like make sure I'm not dozing off on accident, because all of a sudden there's so much more silence. There's so many more like moments of like people brooding and being upset all of a sudden. I mean, yeah, but the thing is, ultimately, it's maybe 30 minutes of the movie?
Yeah, maybe not even, because
before it picks back up.
They're spurned to action pretty quick. There's a moment where you hear the vampires like running across the roof, which is a really tense, kind of scary moment, but they're not found. It's just, you know, at this point they decide they need to move because they're like, well, if the vampires are running around this specific house now, like, they're gonna break in here eventually. Like,
they'll eventually find us. Yeah,
which really fucking scared me just now. I heard basically my office door just open right as I'm saying vampires are trying to break in. It like gave me a very caveman kind of reaction. So, and they're spurned to action also from the Alzheimer's dad breaking out, and then the guy just basically outright giving away their position by running after his dad. Then they see the I can't remember the order of events here. They see the flashlight.
That's one of the last things they see. That's like the last sequence before like the factory show off and all that stuff.
Well, no, they have the are you talking about Billy with the flashlight?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's they kill, okay, so they piss off the Danny Houston lead vampire because they kill his girlfriend.
Yes, which I liked this version of sun poisoning. Like, she didn't just fry up, she got kind of flashbanged by like a UV light for plants.
It was a UV light that just like it burns her, and like in such a way that like
it seems like she's poisoned and like unsavable.
It's different from how Eben spoilers burns up at the end, which is like very impactful because it's two different ways of doing it. I thought that shit was so cool. Like I love that it was like the only weakness these vampires seem to have is either light or simply just being so physically damaged that there's simply no way they could come back.
Because they have healing powers, of course, right? A couple of them are shot a bunch, and they're just kind of like unfazed by it. So, you know, they have classic vampire immortality, but this one,
but it's like you know the you know Mr. Danny Houston gets his head exploded. They throw a guy into the fucking Chekhov's garbage disposal in the plants. As soon as they introduce that at the beginning, you're like, someone is going in there.
Yep,
and it's going to be amazing.
Why are they showing us this giant metal grinder thing?
And it's beautiful. But you know, I love that there wasn't like they weren't like, we need to try and stake it. We need to try and get it with a silver cross. We need to. Like, it's fun when they play with vampire lore, and it's like, no, these ones you have to blow them up, explode their brains, or you need to burn them with light. I don't know, something about vampires that are only reactive to light. I think that's really cool. It's like they're otherwise just basically invincible. And it just, because with the setting, it just works so perfectly. It's just such a good core concept. But yeah, so they kill, I can't even remember her name, but they kill his girlfriend, and then they fuck her up with the lights, and then I don't even remember how he does it, but he kills his girlfriend. And then and then Mr. Snowplow guy has his little like, this is my final moment of redemption, sort of. I'm like the town asshole, but I love y'all. And he kills a bunch of them.
Yeah, he tries to snowplow into the thing with a bunch of dynamite. And
yeah.
And somehow survive. Oh no, it's not dynamite. It's a bunch of flares. That's why.
It's really silly because those road flares would not do jack shit.
No, they wouldn't blow up like that.
They would maybe burn him pretty bad, but like, but still, it is a very effective moment, and I mean it's. Like everything Taylor was saying about, you know, just Eben's character and like the core theme of the films, you know, being this sort of, you know, about the strength of humanity and just, I mean, I don't know if you guys looked at it all, but like Eben is a Hebrew name. It's from Ebenezer, which literally means stone of the help.
Oh,
so it's like he's the foundation, you know.
I see. Nice.
He's the rock. He's the foundation of this entire town. He's the one who's too busy doing his job and actually doing his job to, you know, like go pick up his estranged wife from the airport just because, you know, she was the first person. Yeah, he was the first contact. That kind of thing. Like, and then the fact that he is sort of the mirror opposite of the lead vampire, who's like, you know, pure evil, a manipulator, a user, you know, and like the stranger's sort of like an inverse mirror image of the townspeople, all used up and has no support. I don't know why I went off on that little tangent. Sorry, because I was just, I just wanted to make sure we got the order right of because then Billy, the lead up into the final act, it's like they see the flashlight, and Billy has just done a little he did a little family annihilation and a little classic Stephen King's The Mist move, I don't know if you guys like Stephen King at all? Are you guys familiar with some of his bigger works? Out of curiosity, because this reminded me a lot of one.
Well, I am significantly more familiar than Kyle would be, I suppose.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I just wanted to mention while I was thinking of it because the family annihilation made me think of.
Oh, for sure. But, yeah. How could you not think of The Mist whenever that happens?
Yeah. But also, just the story of this movie also reminds me a lot of Salem's Lot. If
for sure. Actually, I also thought of it.
It's a vampire movie about. There's another character. There's a character in that movie who is like a harbinger. That he's like the vampires are coming, and it doesn't play out similarly, but sort of similar vibes in that regard. But yeah, so they Billy.
Am I misremembering that the Mist? This is total side tangent. That the Mist ending was differently written.
Yes, that is correct.
Stephen King's book. Okay.
The filmmakers absolutely improved on it, and King himself has been like, yeah. It's
the difference, if you're curious, the short story ends with them getting in the car and driving into the mist with this kind of unknown where will it resolve, whereas the film shows them run out of gas, the dad kills his son and like his passengers and runs out of bullets and wants to kill himself arrives. And then the rescue breaks through the mist as he's like trying to kill himself. Yeah, so
the tanks roll through.
That might be like on par with 7 in terms of brutal endings.
It's like one of the all-time, iconic.
So horrific.
But yeah, so then Billy's there, and Eben's got to be like, hey man, you
don't kill your family. No.
Yeah, dude, hey man, you're not supposed to do that.
That's a big no.
Hey, you're not supposed to do that. By the way, let's go to the power plant.
Something I know we're kind of skipped over the girl vampire bit, but
let's hear it.
I think that was a pretty significant moment because, like, if we want to talk about characters not doing stuff or whatever, like, I feel like this broke Jake, which is Eben's brother, because he's the one who ends up having to decapitate this child, and like this actor does such good like visible shock, like. I believe this.
I forgot about that. My God.
Yeah, like, and nobody ends up really dying. I think maybe one character dies when like they find out there's vampires in there, but like there's this sense of like one as the audience are like, are they gonna fucking have to kill a child? And yeah, they do, and
they sure are.
And it really...
the one guy dies. He gets bit by the girl.
Yes, and he also
and then he kind of hides it.
And then he does hide his kind of like in a classic zombie fashion. And what I think is the reason I want to bring that up is I actually think that one of the scenes that moved me the most, besides like just, it's when the guy basically confesses like, I'm turning, please kill me. And then Eben's like, all right. And they go to the office and Stella like slides down with her covering her ears. And like you hear the whaps and seeing the like reaction from the other characters is so like, it was so like visceral, and that like nobody could really wanted someone to die, but they knew that this was the humane thing to do. And like, I don't know, the acting of everybody in this like silent performance, no one like screamed, don't do it. They all like protest for a second, but they know that this is the way to, I don't know. That was just like a really good kind of, if you just like take a still of that moment of just like the air of that room is really kind of the horror of this scenario. And
the shared trauma,
and it kind of was like a teaser for what like Eben was gonna have to deal with Billy later. Of like, because if I'm not mistaken, he does the man Walker, I think was the guy's name, who ends up turning. He does say that he did, like when he heard the screams, that he kills his family first, right? Like did I misinterpret that, or does he imply something like that?
You mean the guy with the flashlight?
No. Billy's is you see that. I mean the black guy that was in the group that was turned by the little girl that he asked to be executed.
No,
it felt like he was trying to admit that like he did something dark, so he deserves this. So please kill me. But I don't know if I was just reading into it too much. Like I don't think I have it remembered right. So I was just double checking my memory.
I did not get that vibe.
Okay. I think
I may have missed.
I probably misheard it, honestly.
But I think it's the little bit of lore drop there is just that his family No, his family died in like a car accident or something.
Okay, maybe when he was talking about screams, I assume he meant like of the event that they're witnessing now. He might have been like recalling an event, but I may have just like
wait, hold on.
wires.
Are you conflating Billy and
no?
that
I am
guy?
not. I am not.
Billy. He specifically says, when I heard the screams, I didn't want my family to die like them, so he kills his family.
I remember those two because I was like, it's weird that they did this 2 times in a row. Like while I was watching it, like that's why I feel that way. Because like in the moment, I just misinterpreted the original speech because I was like, yeah, that guy's got he was fuck. I didn't realize how much of a fucked up dude this guy was. And then Billy shows up in the next scene. I'm like, wait, they're like the same guy. What the fuck? But it's because I misinterpreted his speech. That's all. I'm certain of it. I just heard it wrong. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, I remember it just being a really not a lot. There's just implied that his family died and he's been waiting to go to them, and now he's turned and he's not gonna. He's basically like, I can't live forever. I've been waiting to go to my family.
See,
so,
and it makes sense.
Live.
It makes more sense because the way I interpret that was like, I was like, why would you think you would go to heaven after this, buddy? And it was because I was under the impression that he killed his family, and I just misunderstood his story. That's all. So that death is even more sad now, and explains why everyone was so like traumatized by it.
Yeah.
Because it's like the
really
first. Because what I think is interesting, it's like the first death. I think the characters here that isn't the vampires ripping someone apart, and like this is a mercy kill, and like this, like I don't know. It feels different than every other murder they've heard. Kind of. They either see the after effect of it, or they've already turned into a monster, or they were ripped away and they didn't have time to sit there and like process what was happening. This feels like almost like just like an actual murder of a friend, and it's just real tragic.
Because it's like everyone knows what's about to happen. The guy is still human enough to recognize he's turning and say, "No, you need to kill me." So Eben is like, I'm basically chopping the fucking head off of my friend with an axe. I know he's going to turn into a vampire, and you can kind of see like his teeth are starting to get a little bit jagged, and he's gotten the black eyes, but he's saying like, guys, I'm turning. You gotta kill me. So yeah, it's like, you know what's gonna happen, but in the moment, he's fucking axing the head off of his friend.
And because he just came back
utterly horrific
from seeing someone turn and turn on him. So like, Eben knows that there is no backing out of this. He's already seen a version of this. But anyway, I really just wanted to highlight, because to me, that was one of the highlights of like the emotional parts of the movie, of like all the stakes. When you talk about like why you want Eben to win and you want Stella to survive, it's like these moments are really like, when their characters are dying, I'm like, oh, fuck, damn it. I was hoping that guy was going to make it, I was really bummed to find out that he had died. But I think what happens with Danny, his cop friend, is way more interesting. So I'll just pass it back to you guys to talk about that.
Danny,
yeah, isn't it the name of the cop? Was Danny?
Billy.
Sorry, Billy.
Yeah. You're good.
Just default white ass boy names. All right, sorry. Wrong one.
That's basically something else I want to point out too is that the store scene is almost a direct mirror to 28 Days Later. If you remember, Cillian Murphy's character goes into the gas station by himself, and there's a little kid that's infected, comes screaming and running out, and he has an axe, and the implication is he kills the kid, and it's almost the exact same thing as this movie with Eben's younger brother having to kill this little girl.
Interesting.
That, like, these kind of new to this apocalyptic world type characters, their first kill is a child in a supermarket type area. So I almost want to say this is kind of an Easter egg,
like
or
a nod
wink to 28 Days Later, but it could
also,
also just be parallel thoughts. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was, honestly.
They're both British, Kyle. Come on.
Yeah, that's.
Oh,
I didn't want to say
Kyle,
it, but
I did pull up the scene you were talking about. I will say, watching it back, I see that what you're talking about.
Oh, thank God.
And I do concur. Yeah, it's probably. I do think that was some straight up. They were like, we want it to look like 28 Days Later. I think there was around this time in the mid 2000s, because Taylor did correctly point out that Neil Marshall did the same thing in The Descent.
Yeah.
Yeah. there's a I think it must have started probably with Danny Boyle,
Yeah,
or
I would
maybe
guess
another English filmmaker.
He's quite a pioneer.
But it was a go-to way, I think, for a lot of these guys to, add a little extra flair. I really actually like it here in 30 Days of Night, because this movie is it's strange because it's a movie that you would almost expect to be more stylized, because it's not as if it's without style. It's very visually stylistic, but it's not unrealistic, and it's also not full of that. Like, if every scene was edited with that, like, crazy,
it would be too much.
Shaky cam with, like, there are so many. I can think of just so many horrible, like, WWE presents, like slasher movies, and like like C grade horror movies from 2004 that, like, the editing just is like, we turned a strobe light on, and that's what it looks like. And we're shaking the camera around, and it makes me appreciate the movie like 10 times more than I would. Like, the fact that it knows when to loosen the restraints, but for the most part, it's a very well restrained movie.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that what I said earlier about this was that it was only specific shots in this movie that keyed me into this, because overall it is restrained, and it knows when to pull its punches. And that shot is a very intense, high-energy moment, and I was like, oh, it's got that editing style. It's got that energy that a lot of these action-y mid-2000s English movies have. So that's
when I watched it back. When I watched it back, it was also, like, the shot itself was way longer than I had remembered. Like, it cuts a couple times. It's a longer sequence than I even realized. For some reason, in my memory, it was so fast. I was like, how did you even notice that? But when you watch it, it's like, oh, yeah, duh.
You can see it. Yeah, because there's the kind of wide shot of the car, and then there's the closer shot of him doing the thing, and then so there's a lot more to it. But I'm glad we cleared that up.
We had to get to the bottom of that one. That was very critical.
I know I'm not crazy, but I haven't seen that so much lately. So
it really did
feels
fall
like
out
a
of
fad.
fashion in the 2010s. Yeah, absolutely.
Although 28 years later by Danny Boyle has a lot of that higher energy, very specific style, but it isn't.
But that's Danny Boyle.
Yes.
That's a Danny Boyle thing.
That felt like Danny Boyle versus this.
Because this movie would feel disrespectful if it was doing, like, fucking instant replay on that kill type shit.
Yeah,
like this would be.
It's amazing what certain directors can get away with. Yeah. No, this movie, they knew what they were doing, and they did it extremely well.
Yeah. It is a real shame that it came out in 2007, because if this came out like 10 years ago, God, it would be a modern classic, I think.
Yeah. It was just so immediately overshadowed by Twilight that it really
should we talk about do we want to talk about that at all at any point with David Slade? Mention that?
Oh, did he do one of the Twilights?
This got hit. So the next movie he did after this was
Twilight Saga Eclipse. Oh my God.
He did the Twilight Saga Eclipse, and then I mentioned this in my review when I first watched this, because I looked at his career and I was like, at first I was like, oh damn, making Twilight like killed his career as a filmmaker, because you see he did Hard Candy, he did 30 Days of Night, 3, then he does Twilight. That's 2010. He doesn't make another feature film until he makes that interactive Netflix Black Mirror
Bandersnatch movie. God, that movie sucked fucking ass.
And then so that's not even like a real movie. And then he made an okay horror movie in 2023
called
Dark Harvest.
Damn, I was hoping I'd seen it. Nope, pass.
No, it's kind of cool. It's got some good ideas, but it's not nearly in the cool realm of 30 Days of Night. But I looked closer and I was like, oh, it looks like he got mostly into TV directing. So it's conjecture, but my hope is that, he had his time in feature films, if I had to guess based on his age, I assume he probably had kids and wanted a more regular type of day job.
So you go
and
to
so
TV.
You make a
got
lot of
into
money
TV
directing
directing.
Twilight too.
Yeah,
Right,
that.
you
I mean,
get
he probably got a huge paycheck and was able to just semi-retire.
You do a big franchise film, and then you do 10 years of TV directing, do a couple smaller movies, and it's like, oh, actually, I think this guy might have the perfect career.
Yeah,
At first, I
probably.
felt bad for him, just thinking like, oh wow, I really hope this guy isn't being like held back from being able to make other great movies. But the reality is, I mean, I think, if a filmmaker wants to make something, they'll make something, and they'll make it known if whatever they can't make is not being made for the most part. Famously, like, there are directors that love to talk about their movies that never got made. But I just think, I realized, I was like, maybe this is just me growing up, but I'm like, if I had a career like him, I wouldn't be upset at all.
No,
I was like,
certainly not.
Yeah,
I would guess Dark Harvest was
like, I
like
hate
him like going, man, I kind of miss making just a nice.
Yeah,
I miss
like
making
a classic
movies.
horror
Yeah, I
movie.
just want to make like a little horror movie. But
and that's exactly what it was.
Let's
Anyway,
again rein this back into 30 Days of Night. I want to talk about the ending.
Yes.
As we wrap up this longer pod.
Yeah, we're at the end of the film. Yeah.
Yeah.
The vampires, they pop open the Alaska pipeline. They're going to burn the town down. The evidence.
Yeah. How do you feel about the ending, Taylor?
I loved the ending because it does my favorite thing of this very intense moment, hard cut. When that moment ends, you don't sit and be like, 2 days later.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really care.
Nope.
It doesn't matter because the movie was about this event and the things that happened to these people. Like, does Stella find a new love? Like, I don't fucking care, really, but...
Right.
Is
she gonna go hunt the vampires? She's got that look in her eye,
but...
Oh,
the vampire's gonna hit another town? It's like, I don't really care. It's about, like... And so, for me, I found the sacrifice at the end, if I thought that is very obvious. Like, it kind of makes sense. And I loved the fight being so, like, non-dramatic. Besides, like, it was super powered, but, like, Evan was getting his ass kicked most of the fight. He just is able to not just be instantly killed. And I like how much of like this kind of old world energy there is to it, where they see their king and they're like letting the king fight. And when the king dies, they're all just like, well, we're at the end of our time. I guess we're just going to go.
Yeah.
And
they all look around. They're like, huh, well, shit. All right.
Yeah. And I think that's like to me, I think some people might not like that, but to me, that was like the perfect level of like, this is just nature, right? It was just this clan of vampires, and the clan's head gets cut off, and they're like, well, I'm going to go hibernate for this season because the sun's coming up. Like, I don't know, I'll survive later. And I just feel like that feels like why this is almost more powerful. Is like, this is just a act of nature that happened to this. There is no real, like, moral or reason other than, like, testing these people. And they make a throwaway line really earlier of like, why is this happening? And it's like, it's, why it's happening here because we live here. Like, we are the hardest people in the world because we can survive 30 days of night every year. You know what I mean? This is just another thing to tell. Like, we are built differently and we can handle it. So, and then I thought the actual ending of like them sitting together and we're going to see the sunrise together. And then him dying in her arms, and she like, them just like really like leaning into each other and being there for each other at the end, I thought was just a very powerful way.
I mean, that music, that song is, oh my gosh.
Very good.
Letting that play louder than the audio, and like, I don't know, and then like it just ends right with the sun coming up. Like, I think it's perfect. I don't know how else I would want that to end.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we should illustrate what happens at the end. Do you want to give the story of like how what happens at the end actually?
Yeah, I
like lay it out.
So this is a follow-up to basically they're in that factory, as we talk about. A vampire follows them, and they all like as a group team up together, and Billy redeems himself by knocking the vampire in there along with his hand, which I think that might be the most visceral display of like I'm in misery until I die I've ever seen. And that like
I can't believe how good his arm looks.
Yeah,
did they cut off his arm to do that?
I don't. That's
Jesus
actually
Christ.
because I remember in theaters, this moment to me was like the most I had been tested visually in my life. I was like, I can't look at this. It's too much.
Yeah, I'm watching. This is like borderline snuff shit.
Yeah, it was
looks
crazy.
like a guy just got his arm chewed up by a metal machine.
And
like,
I just think his acting of the misery he's in, and like, what do they do? No one knows what to do. And that like very subtle, slow transition into the howling of the vampires. Like, oh my fucking god, so good.
God, that sequence.
So then,
so
Go
before
ahead.
you move on, I want to mention something. There's a character in the movie that we didn't talk about where he ends up, during the initial attack, his wife gets pulled out of their like kitchen window, which is the opening sequence.
Oh yeah,
so scary and cool.
Mm-hmm.
So his wife gets pulled out by this vampire, and he immediately like launches out the window to go follow her, and it cuts to other stuff. You don't see what happens to them. Then later, it's shown this guy survived. He's hiding under these houses because in this Alaskan town, all these homes are kind of like almost like trailers. They're on stilts. I imagine it has to do with heating, circulation, or something.
And I
don't
think
know. It
it's
would actually make your house freeze faster. So
I think it might have to do something with how frozen the ground is about, like trying to.
Okay, sure.
That supports.
So
harder.
he's like under this house. You can't really see him because it's really shadowy and dark, but you can kind of see his eyes, and you're like, wait a second, he looks a little off. And at this point, the town is kind of quieted down. Eben is trying to find survivors, or just he's like trying to run somewhere. And he sees this guy, and he's like, wait, John, is that you? And he's like, yeah, help. And it turns out this guy got cut by one of these vampires, and he has been slowly turning over time. And this is is this days later? I think it actually is based on the time.
Yeah.
He says he's been outside for 7 days underneath the house.
Yes.
That's why
a week.
Yeah, and that's why like when you're watching, you're like, what the fuck? How is this possible? He can't be alive. And then continue, Kyle.
Yeah. So then as Eben reaches under the house because it's nighttime and it's dark and he can't really see this guy, he pulls this guy out, and as soon as his face kind of hits the moonlight, you see he's turning into a vampire. And so Eben is like, holy fuck, and like lets go of him, and the guy's like, what's wrong, Eben? And he slowly kind of turns more vampiric and hostile, and eventually he attacks Eben, and Eben has the axe, and he kills him. But my whole long-winded point of this is number one, the vampires say early, cut off all of their heads because we don't want them to turn. They don't want to add more people to their crew. This is a slaughter mission. This is not a recruitment. So, they do keep that detail in mind. All the bodies are fucking headless. Whenever they show a shot of a body, they don't have a goddamn head.
You know what's crazy? I actually didn't piece that together until you just said that. That is so awesome. That's why they do that.
So
oh my
good.
god.
Yes. They don't, so that's how they prevent people from turning, and that also explains why they break the neck of the Wanderer and then pull off his head. You don't see them do it, but you hear it. You hear the neck crack, then you keep hearing squishing and stretching, and then you hear kind of like a burst of gore, and the implication is they literally pull the head off of the Wanderer. That's why they're beheading him. So
cool.
What I'm trying to get at here is that the normal duration for transformation is fairly slow. And we also get that shown by the, I would call him like almost Hawaiian, indigenous or something. The guy who gets mercy killed by Eben that we talked about earlier. He gets bit by this girl, and over time, maybe a couple days, starts turning and realizes it and asks to be mercy killed. John, I don't even know if that's his name, the guy who's under the house, turns over a week time. However, if you get one of this vampire's blood directly into your bloodstream, you transform almost immediately. And that it is a consistent through line. That's another thing that in zombie movies, they'll just fudge depending on the situation. Like, well, we need him to turn quick in this spot, so just make him turn quick. I like this movie is consistent with its rules. If you get scratched or you get some of their saliva on inside of you, right, like with a bite, you turn over time. But if you get their blood in your blood, it's an almost instant transformation. And that's what happens with Billy. He pushes the vampire into the meat grinder. His arm gets caught in the meat grinder. So now his blood and exposed arm gets all of the blood spraying from the vampire into his bloodstream. He transforms like within 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Now, Taylor, continue. That's what just happened.
Yeah,
right?
so
he pushes the guy in and turns into a vampire.
So then what Eben kind of comes to the conclusion of is like, we cannot survive or win this without some extra tool. I'm going to take the blood from our friend Billy here, inject it into myself, fight them on their terms, and then I'm going to die when the sun comes up. And he kind of just does this quickly to prevent anyone from stopping him. He basically says goodbye to his brother and kind of leaves the survivors there. And obviously the implication is they survive. We don't get to see the fallout with them. But then Eben just kind of goes to Main Street and just calls out the lead dude and is just like, all right, let's fucking go. And they just have a brawl. And at first, Eben kind of gets a couple good shots in, but then it's like as the fight goes on, is just getting kind of like tossed around like a toy.
This guy refers to him as, he goes, the one who fights. So like they know that this guy, he's got the reputation. He is their leader. Honestly,
in another version of this story where he loses the battle, maybe they let him join the vampire crew, like give him an option because
right, like that's something I wanted to mention earlier when we were talking about the familiars. Is like, just by virtue of you being submissive means you do not have what it takes to be a vampire.
Right.
That's the irony of all of it. They're so pathetic and desperate to be a vampire, they'll do anything, but they don't realize that is what makes them unworthy of being a vampire.
Yeah.
It's usually the people who don't want to be a vampire that end up becoming a vampire, or the people who are really strong and independent who are deserving of it. So that's a really, really cool idea, Taylor, is that, yeah, maybe there's a world where he loses the fight and they're like, you know what? You're worthy. You should become one of us.
Yeah, kill your friends and
that's
you can come with us. He's the one who kills the mate of the leader. And this idea that sometimes, normally you would expect like revenge, but like in these cultures, like they value people who can, like, you kill the king, or I guess you're obviously better than the king, which is why when he kills the lead vampire, the rest of them don't, like, sick on him as, like, well, he's obviously the king. But they're brawling, and I guess as kind of, like, this ultimate show-off move, like, the lead vampire has this massive lunge, and Eben just fucking punches through, open mouth, back a skull, just brain punches the dude, and is dead. And I want to say is that what I love about this is like that is how this would end, is just two people fighting and someone gets a cheap shot, the right hit. This vampire in particular isn't more powerful or special than any others other than his intelligence, right? So like he would just get taken down.
Trait.
And Eben, as we've seen, is a resourceful, smart, strong individual. So it makes sense that he'd be on par. And like, I don't know. I like it wasn't drug out. Movies, a lot of times, these fights aren't fun if they're 8 minutes long. We always know that they're kind of going to end, and this way is more surprising. So just fucking kills him, and then that's when him and Stella finally have that like the quiet to go and let him pass not so peacefully into the sunset or sunrise rather.
Yeah, I love that it was painful. I love that it was like it hurt, but it's like they were together. Like, I don't know. It was appropriate. You wouldn't want that to be a serene moment.
And
it needs to stay consistently gruesome.
And I think that's almost
logical.
Thematic in that, like, it's about, like, it's worth it. Like, she doesn't run away from being with someone when they're suffering, and, like, the idea is being with your family no matter what, and, like, everybody needs some. I don't know. So, like, to me, that feels like even thematic with the kind of how Eben has been chilling.
Absolutely, and because it's like it takes a certain type to be able to, on a thematic level, it takes a certain type of resilience to be able to even deal with some of these issues and to handle that kind of growth or change. And sometimes, it's like overwhelming. Sometimes it's like it's literally all changing, altering the experience and how, like, on a metaphorical level.
One thing I want to say too about the end of this movie, it is something I didn't like as much because I overthink stuff like this. What we didn't mention was, because the vampires also know that daytime is coming, At some point, they mentioned that we should have come here a long time ago. I don't know if that means they're going to return again when the population comes back, or what their kind of overall plan was. Maybe they just wanted this to be the crazy party night, and then they'll go somewhere else. I'm not sure. But their way of closing out all of this is the vampires, they break open this pipeline that's nearby, this oil pipeline, and oil is just seeping out from all these different openings that they've created, and is leaking into the town, and then they set it on fire. That is what incites this whole ending sequence, is that the vampires are basically covering their tracks. They're going to burn the whole place down, and it's just going to look like a bad accident, is what one of the characters even says. They're trying to cover everything up. My thought is that, number one, that won't work because they know there are survivors in the factory. They heard one of the vampire friends followed them there. They had to have heard the commotion and the screaming. I'm pretty sure they even show some shots of them reacting to it, of we got to deal with this. So, yeah. Is their idea that they're going to hope to burn the factory people alive, but the factory people, I guess they're literally going to stand there and go, okay, if they try to run out of the factory, we kill them. If they stay in the factory, they burn alive. I'll concede that. Maybe that's what they were going for, right?
Yeah, they're literally just if they have to leave if they don't want to burn, is their probably their thought process.
That's fine, but there's a part of me that goes there's no way people would think this is just an accident, because there would be headless bodies everywhere. There would be gigantic, deliberate and intentional slices in the oil pipes of clearly where, because there's a bunch of different spots where oil is leaking out of this pipeline.
Once you start doing this, though,
yes,
you can't start unraveling at this level, because they did make sequels that do directly address what you're asking.
Oh, do they really? Well, I'm gonna pretend those don't exist, because
there's a direct sequel about Stella returning to Los Angeles,
to hunt the
different
vampires.
Actress,
yeah,
and it's there is a revenge. There are other vampires who are coming, so it's in universe they are aware that there is at least a survivor, but in this hypothetical world of what if this happened, and I'm assuming the idea is once you start digging into that, you have to go. The authorities would overlook things that are crazy,
so this is
or something.
Kyle,
they're not going in looking for something suspicious. They're going,
True.
This oil pipeline exploded. We're not going to do the kind of we're not going to do a necropsy on burnt remains to try and figure out how they got killed. We're going to assume they burned in a horrible accident or whatever. Because once you start trying to question the logic and motives of stuff, it really starts to fall apart.
I think, Kyle,
that's the problem I have with the ending.
Using real-like logic.
Well, I think you could even argue that it is easier to... You don't even have to wave it as they have to be incompetent as much as I think that the real answer is vampires are real is the conclusion that these human beings have to come to is such a far-fetched thing that they would have to assume...
They wouldn't.
That they would have to assume that one of the people who perished in this thing went fucking crazy in this isolated town, and people that have done crazier shit out there, and they just wanted to burn it all down. And I think it's actually surprisingly easy for us to skip over the that doesn't add up, because it'd be that wraps it up cleanly. Yeah. Okay. It was just some guy who went crazy in the wilderness in Alaska, and I think that would be a pretty... And mind you... The other thing I wanted to add was the vampire part, is that no other vampire seems to have an independent thought. They all look to the call of their leader. They never suggest ideas. They also look more feral than the leader does, in my opinion. That in some ways...
specifically.
That when he goes, there is no brain left. That none of them have this, aspirational... I want to be hidden.
It's a hive mind thing.
That it was really just this cult leader's plan. That this particular vampire had these aspirations, and now that he's gone, it's the rest are just gonna go back to the woods or out wherever they are and not be thinking. That's my other thoughts. Why it worked for me.
It's like what you said. It echoes nature. Yeah. It's just like how that final fight, instead of it being a stupid 2 rubbery CG bodies flying through trailers in the snow, it's like a 30-second fist fight and it's over before it's like basically started. And that's like, it's like watching two lions fight. It's like really upsettingly brutal and bloody and really short. And because they know exactly what they're doing, they know how to kill each other. And then anyone watching is just sort of like, all right, damn, well, I guess we're just gonna kind of figure stuff out ourselves now. I'm just gonna go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go hang out over here until something bigger and stronger tells me what to do. Like, so much of nature is that dynamic that it's my favorite. It's without a doubt, it's my favorite part of this movie. Is that the sort of consistent, the whatever lore is present. Like, I love every decision they made about these vampires is so cool and so clever without being like earth shattering. Like, it's just like, I can't believe other stories aren't utilizing this kind of like tone for you know what I mean? Like, isn't it crazy that this is somehow the only vampire movie that's like this?
That's what I thought when I rewatched it. I'm like, how? Because so you quoted me earlier in my review. What I said was this movie should have done for the vampire genre.
Oh, yeah.
What 28 Days Later did for the zombie genre. See, 28 Days Later actually revitalized the genre with inventing these like hyper fast infected, and that became a very common thing now. That's the standard almost for a lot of zombie movies. Vampires, opposite. They fully latched on to the Dracula style, sexy, suave, seductive Twilight shit. And they stayed that way. This is the only vampire movie that I'm aware of where the vampires are truly feral. They are, as we've said multiple times, they're just forces of nature. They speak an ancient dead language that nobody knows. They look like fucking monsters. They don't transform depending. Their teeth don't grow and shrink. They look like fucking beasts, and they're terrifying. But they're also, like, not quite independent thinkers, as you've just pointed out, Taylor, as they are kind of hive-minded in that way. But, like, they're clearly smart enough to think as smart as a human. They just look to their leader. They are more feral in that way, where they kind of have the alpha that tells them what they can and can't do. But they're still smart. And, like, yeah, I mean, these vampires are so awesome, and it is a real shame that it didn't catch on in any way.
Yeah, it's going to be a real sticking point for me now. Like, the fact that somehow no one, like this is we've talked about this briefly, but just like it somehow sort of escaped hitting real cult classic status, and it somehow escaped that sort of, it's like it hasn't had a real rehabilitation in like mainstream movie culture. And like, it's so interesting to me that, you know, like you said, the movie vampire kind of just stayed at it was more about the seduction, the all of this sort of established, all these like arcane rules about, you know, this or that, and like not treating them like, you know, mythical beasts instead of just like tragic, it's a tragic human.
Yes.
But like, you know, and even to the point where it's like, you know, what was the last big vampire movie that was Sinners, which was a lot more similar to, you know, it was nice.
Yeah.
It felt like it was moving in that direction, and I would be shocked if Ryan Coogler wasn't a fan of 30 Days of Night, and that's maybe the only reason it was like that. Just a guess.
Because they do look like extremely similar. They have the same kind of shark mouth teeth. They have really long, nasty fingernails. Like they're very feral.
And that hive mind sort of mentality, like that stuff is present, I think, and you know, but they still have a bit of more of that humanized element. So it's a little more in the middle. And because like before that, I mean, you have like fucking Nosferatu, and that's just Dracula. That's just the classic.
Yep.
You know, he's a monster, but it's not the same way. I don't want, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a time and a place for Dracula, like the Bram Stoker style vampire, and that's fine and all. But it really has been done to death. I love this like fucking this ancient shark creature, tribal, you know, bloodthirsty warrior thing.
Yes.
I want more of that. It's so cool. Like,
God,
and it's something that you can really take, and also like you could set in other time periods. Like, you could do all sorts of insane stuff with this.
They could do
concept.
a total apocalyptic. Well, I guess that's the thing.
You could do anything with it. Yeah, it's untapped. Could. It's untapped potential.
Yeah, you could make a zombie apocalypse movie that is instead these like feral vampires, and it would make complete sense. Like maybe they are human in there, but they have such lust for blood that they can't help themselves but to kill you, you know? And yeah, that makes me like this movie even more. Of course,
it's absolutely one of those movies where it's like it's flawed in some ways, but those flaws almost add to it. Like I like it more because of the flaws. And it's not even that I really have. It's not even really flaws. I just have nitpicks, story nitpicks. It's not even real. Like, there's no technical problems with this movie. There's no. At least I can't think of one. I mean, really, my only complaint is just some of the editing. But again, it's like, I think a lot of that it's just intentional choice of the filmmakers, and it's hard to fault them for that.
And it works too. The other thing I wanted to point out, this is probably the last thing I'll have to say about this, is in the middle when it slows down, you know, the movie, it's so frantic and high energy that this does feel like a bit of a deserved come down for the audience. Is like, okay,
also true, yeah.
Let's just relax for a second. Everyone can take even the characters are taking some deep breaths here. We get a moment of reprieve, and then it kind of spikes up again anyway. So that's why I thought the pacing didn't suffer in this movie. Even in the slower part, I still felt completely engaged and pulled along.
I mean, again, I will always qualify it with I know I'm doing the thing where it's like I need to just always remember I'm looking at it from the perspective of like I need to just, you know, the asterisk is I'm looking at it with the lens of what I wish I was watching, which isn't fair. It's never fair to a movie to do it to that.
I used to do that all the time.
I wish it was more like this, or I think it would be better if this happened instead. And it's like, well, that's not what it is, though. So I need to just take it at face value and for what it is, and appreciate it in that way.
That's honestly only a skill I've developed in the last couple years of completely letting go and watching a movie and letting it take me on the ride that I'm strapped into versus like, you know, sitting down on a roller coaster and then being mad when it goes up and down. It's like, that's your fault if you're doing that. Like, watch
right.
You know,
and it's like, and being able and it makes it easier that this movie it respects the audience and the viewer and like is respectful of like their intelligence, and so it just makes it easier to just go with it. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I'm being treated. It's not being spoon-fed to me, so I'll, you know, I can live with if certain decisions about the narrative or how they decide to gloss over this or that, or if I feel like a certain amount of character depth is important.
This 30 Days a Night comic came out in 2002.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't realize how long he was pitching for the movie, because the movie comes out in 2007, so I was like, oh. I thought he pitched
it as a movie before even 2002, and I guess I didn't realize to take it.
Sorry, I did not realize how long of a passion project this was. I was like, the comic that he ended.
Well, that's honestly pretty short, all things considered, for a passion project. So, I mean, sometimes these kinds of projects take like 30 years for some people, whereas this took, you know, probably a decade from start to finish.
I would say that's a fucking long time.
No, I know. I'm just saying it's just funny.
I would argue that maybe passion projects 30 years is not an average, but maybe an outlier.
Yeah,
if you're telling me the average, just like, oh yeah, that takes 30
just the notable ones. I think of notable ones
Megalopolis
like that.
Doesn't count, right?
Yeah,
I mean, Lord of the Rings was a passion project, and that took 10 years for the 3 films. And that is like, for how the scope and scale of that is like,
it's not a very relevant.
I think that makes 30 Days of Night sound even more impassioned, because it's like one guy with one idea and one comic, and it took him 10 years to get everything going. Whereas, you know, the Lord of the Rings, that scale with that fan base and all of that still took 10 years. So, I didn't realize that the graphic novel came out that long before. I guess if it's like he's trying to pitch it, people say no. A couple years later, he makes a graphic novel. catches on, gets a bit of an audience. A couple years later, somebody says, yeah, let's do this. Then it moves into production. And then a couple years later, filming, editing, it's released. So like, I can see all of that in my head, but that's still a long time.
Yeah, for sure. I did look at some of the sequel, both in comic and movie form. And every single time it basically starts with either Stella being arrested for murder or trying to convince people that vampires are real. So the story is very clear in that, like, the world just assumes it was a human that went fucking nuts in this abandoned area in the world. And so it kind of follows up the way I guess I assumed of that.
No, yes, that I'm glad you argued that, because, you know, the reality is this movie is grounded enough that I can't help myself but think, like, this feels like it could be real, right? They made the characters smart. They made the violence realistic. So the movie did itself a disservice by being so realistic and ending in a way that makes me question it in a realistic way. However, yeah, if you go, nobody in this town survived, like, the detectives will have questions. They'll go, how did nobody survive this? Like, this looked like a slow-moving fire. You're telling me nobody got into a car and just drove, a mile away to save themselves? How did everyone die? Why are there headless bodies? Like, stuff is not adding up here, but no one's alive to answer the questions. This is assuming it goes the way of the vampires and, like, they get to clean it all up. So, of course, the detectives would have questions, but there would just be no way for them to investigate it, and they would have to go, like, this is really fucking weird. Yeah, maybe somebody just snapped and turned into a serial killer and then, sabotage the whole town. That's the only thing we can say. All right. I am completely willing to concede that that's how that storyline ends. That version would end like that, and I'm completely okay with the ending.
With an oil company also breathing down their neck to be like, I swear to God, there better not be any controversy.
yeah, true. Like, we will pay you off to even say what we want you to say. Like, you're this small town in Alaska. For all we fucking know, nobody would even know this happened at all. I guess the people returning to their home would be like, what? But,
they just get the corporation pays them all off, resettles them somewhere else.
Yeah.
Somewhere else along the pipeline.
Enough, like, real life incidences that are close to this in some way that, like, you just take it to the logical extreme. And that's what a lot of horror is, right? You just take a moment and be like, what is the most extreme version of it? And, yeah. So, and now why, like, when I talk about it, why didn't it get to 5 for me? I think it's just that it almost is, as Jake has been pointing out, is almost because it was so good that it just, like, didn't quite measure up to all its other goodnesses, that it, like, that middle part being dragged down. I was like, you're skipping, like, 2 weeks in a way that, like, I feel like we shouldn't be allowed to do that. Like, the conflict should have, like, maybe resolved on day 13 of 30, and that would be more believable to me than, like, they were left alone for 2 weeks with no vampire incidents. That seems kind of crazy to me, but...
Yeah.
And that, I think...
The passage of time and some character development is really what knocked this down for me, and those are significant enough that I can't just dismiss it and go like, well, the rest is so good, which it is, but there's a couple things where it's like, I just don't believe these guys survived 30 days. It feels like this is an hour later, and like, why also even have Eben's younger brother? They didn't even need him in the movie, truthfully. Like, he literally could have been a non-character.
Yeah, it is very true. The fact that he's his brother and not just a cousin or a friend of the town is irrelevant, right? Except that he's Eben would be motivated to protect him. That is the only real, like... Yeah. I don't know. I definitely...
Which is... It's not invalid, but it does, for me, what it does is it opens up so much more potential that they just never filled.
Yep.
And, like, which again, that's the fantasy version of the film in my mind that I think is ideal, but it's like, that's not the one that was made, and that, so that's okay. That being said, you guys, this conversation has convinced me, and you guys, I can't talk this impassioned about, this excitedly about a film and be like, it's really underrated, and honestly, I really do like most of it without exception, and, like, it's a 4 out.
Yes. Me and Kyle have discovered this. That has happened to me before when I'm like, I think my knee-jerk reaction isn't really as accurate if this is how I feel when I talk about it. So
yeah, like, when I really investigate my feelings, I'm like, no, this is a genuinely underrated movie. I understand why it's underrated, but it shouldn't be as under-recognized or underappreciated as I think it is.
Yeah. Well,
hell yeah.
Or was.
Me and Taylor, not almost every podcast, but a lot of them, we will talk each other up or down some star values because we're like, oh yeah, that sucked way more than I actually remember. Oh wait, and then Taylor will ask a question, and I'm like, oh yeah, that actually does suck way worse now. And so glad to be on the upswing boat. That's exciting.
I'll be happily evangelizing for 30 days.
Yes,
good.
You know,
all right, I'm glad.
To horror fans and to people who think vampires are cool.
I genuinely think the best comparison for me is this is the vampire version of 28 Days Later. It does everything for that genre that 28 Days did for that one. So it's just so exciting. It's so fun to watch it every time. I love it in the same ways every time I watch it. It really is just so great.
It's such a singular movie.
Yeah,
like it's kind of the only thing like it in that sense of, you know, it has its cousin 28 Days Later, but where else am I going to watch like a freezing cold surviving vampires in Alaska movie? Like this is it.
It's the premise that is so fucking brilliant and good.
It's just
that
so good.
Sets this movie up in just the most perfect way for vampires. Like, I don't know how he thought of that, but it is so cool.
This is just one of those classic movies that makes you like, it's the kind of movie that when you talk about it, it makes you excited just to be a fan of movies, to like movies, but also like it gets like, even just I was watching some of the special features on the Blu-ray and like just watching them do pre-production or watching them build the set. It's like, talking about this movie is the kind of movie that makes me excited about making movies also.
Wow.
Because so much of this movie I spent thinking about how would I have approached this project, or, you know, how would I have done this scene differently, or, you know, and you can see the passion that these filmmakers had, and that the you know, you see the fun and all the work that went into it. It's very, very tangible on screen, I think, because it is absolutely a passion project, and it, without that passion, I think this movie wouldn't be as unique as it is. Like, that's the only way it gets made.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's another.
So that's where I stand on
parallel to 28 Days is like it elevated the genre to something more. Like, this movie could have been so much worse. You know, Dawn of the Dead or Land of the Dead, whatever the fuck they're called, the Zack Snyder one. I rewatched that one. I didn't get to mention this earlier, but I rewatched that after thinking I loved it, and I was like, this kind of fucking sucks. Outside of the opening sequence, which also does the drone shot of the cars and hitting people, and it's like really cool, the Zack Snyder Dawn of the Dead movie is just totally ass. And that is the type of movie that something like this could extremely easily fall into the trap of like, just being made as a schlocky zombie movie. This could have just been a schlocky, like, horror vampy movie, but they actually cared about stuff. And they, as you said, the passion comes through. Same with 28 Days Later. It could have just been a zombie movie, but you had intelligent people working on it with a lot of passion and elevating these elements to something more real. And it just works. It's so good, and that's what makes it so good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I got nothing else. That was great.
Nice.
Now we need to find whatever version of what's next. Like,
werewolves.
So we got 28 Days Later. That's vampires. Yeah. What's the werewolf movie equivalent? Is there one about Frankenstein's, the scariest monster? Mummies, the mummies.
Well, the mummy is just.
Where's my dark gritty, like, well, I don't know. I need like one of those like 50s sci-fi movies where it's like a guy in a gorilla suit with like a diving helmet and a TV antennas on his head.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, we need like the dark, gritty passion project of the guy who's like, I want to make that movie.
Jake, you be the guy you want in the world.
Be the guy.
Yeah, I'm inspired by, like, you know, Invasion of the Men from Mars from like 1953 or whatever, and it's just like, but this time we're setting it in inner city Chicago, and it's about trauma. That's another great point for this movie for fans of for horror fans watching horror movies today. If you watch a movie and you go, I'm kind of tired of this movie pretending to be an adult drama because it's explicitly on its face telling me a story about
a trauma.
Yes. You could just watch this instead and have the same experience, but be treated like an adult.
I saw you guys' discourse
where none of it is spoon-fed to you.
Your discourse on Ari Aster in your Discord recently. I was like, I wonder if the trauma core is going to get brought up here because it's just a violent movie about violence, and it's not about how
it is
family,
but it's
was really shitty to you and is actually an occult. Actually,
yeah. It touches on a lot of the same themes without ever talking about them in a very intelligent way. That it turns out sometimes things are better when they're implied, but to balance out the implications, you got to have a scene where a dude gets his head cut off by an axe, and you see it, and it looks like they studied car crash pictures.
Yeah. Someone had to look at a lot of disturbing imagery to get. I
would not.
This movie, right?
I don't want to see those reference images, but that's why this movie stands alone.
I think we'll leave it at that.
Thank you guys for having me on again to talk about this. This was very, very exciting.
You're welcome, and this is the last time. Goodbye.
Wow, that's true.
And that with a gunshot noise, and then I just never appear on the show again.
Damn, that's better than anything we're gonna end with. That's for sure.
Yeah. Now we gotta dwindle down from that. Okay, that was it for this episode. 30 Days of Night. Go watch it, y'all. See ya.
Bye.
It's good.